They say the West was a land of heroes and villains, but under that endless sky, most men lived somewhere in between. Justice wore no badge. Mercy was a rumor, and when the wind spoke, it carried more truth than any law ever written. Among all the restless souls of the frontier, none blurred that line between right and wrong quite like Tom Horn, the man who hunted for justice and died by its hand. Hey, you're watching Echoing Westwinds, where the wind carries the stories time forgot. If you love tales of the untamed frontier, subscribe now and keep riding with us through the ghosts of the Old West. Tom Horn's life began like most Western tragedies do, with hard land, harder parents, and a world that offered no comfort to the weak. He was born in Missouri in 1860, when the country itself was splitting at the seams. His family's farm sat in the middle of nowhere, 600 acres of dust and discipline. His father, Thomas Horn Sr., believed in God, work, and the whip. His mother believed in faith and punishment. Tom believed in freedom. While his siblings sang hymns, he slipped into the woods. The forest became his first teacher, the language of wind, the map of tracks in the dirt, the slow patience of the hunt. He carried a rifle before he carried a Bible, and his only companion was his dog, Shedrick, a creature as loyal as he was wild. Together, they hunted raccoons, quail, and the occasional deer, each chase carving something into the boy's heart, a hunger for the silence after the gunshot. But the peace didn't last. When a neighbor's boy shot Shedrick out of spite, something in Tom Horn broke. His father found the boy's family that night. Nobody ever said what happened, but the next morning, they avoided the Horn farm like it was cursed. For Tom, it was his first lesson in frontier justice, that every wrong, sooner or later, gets paid for in blood. By 14, he'd had enough of his father's cruelty. After a brutal beating that left him bedridden for days, he made his choice. He packed a small meal, kissed his mother goodbye, and left before dawn. He walked west, alone, through the rain-soaked fields of Missouri. No horse, no map, just the idea that somewhere beyond the horizon was a life worth fighting for. He begged for food, worked where he could, and slept beneath the stars. By the time he reached Kansas, the boy had become something else entirely. Lean, sunburned, unbreakable. He worked for the Santa Fe Railroad, drove wagons, and learned Spanish from Mexican laborers. Soon he found himself in New Mexico, running mail routes through Apache territory. At 16, Tom Horn was already a man who lived on the edge of death and called it home. His reputation as a scout and tracker grew quickly. He could follow footprints across bare rock. He could tell a man's weight by the bend of the grass. He could disappear into the desert and return 3 days later without a drop of water left in his canteen, but still alive. It was that skill that drew the attention of Al Sieber, the legendary chief of scouts for the U.S. Army. Sieber was the kind of man who didn't smile, didn't blink, and didn't tolerate weakness. He saw something in Horn, not innocence, but instinct. Under Sieber's command, Horn became a soldier of the wilderness. He served during the Apache Wars, tracking Geronimo's warriors through the burning canyons of Arizona and the Sierra Madre Mountains. He learned to read the land like scripture, to fight with silence, and to survive with nothing but a rifle and a steady hand. The desert became his home, and the Apache, once his enemy, became his teachers. He lived among them for months at a time, learning their words, their ways, their patience. He became something rare, a white man who could move like a shadow among the tribes, respected by both sides and trusted by neither. But the frontier doesn't reward balance, it swallows it. When the wars ended, Horn found himself adrift, too wild for peace, too civilized for chaos. He drifted through jobs, cowboy, herder, freight driver. But there was one thing he did better than anyone else: track men. So when the Pinkerton National Detective Agency came calling, Tom Horn traded the wilderness for a badge. The Pinkertons were the private law of America's powerful. Detectives, spies, and bounty men rolled into one. They hunted train robbers, labor organizers, and anyone who stood in the way of the railroads and the ranch lords. Horn fit right in. He became their shadow, chasing fugitives across Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. He once tracked a gang of train robbers for 2 months through snow and sagebrush, sleeping in his saddle and living off jerky. When he finally caught them, he didn't fire a shot. They surrendered before he even spoke. There was something in his eyes, they said, a calmness that didn't belong to the living. But the same calm that made him deadly also made him dangerous. Horn's methods were brutal, efficient. When he started killing men before the law could, the Pinkertons quietly cut him loose. Officially, he resigned. Unofficially, he was too good at what he did. So he went back to the only kind of work that ever made sense to him: range detective. The cattle barons of Wyoming and Colorado were at war with settlers and sheepmen, each side claiming the other was stealing. The courts were useless, the sheriffs outnumbered. That's where Tom Horn came in. He was hired to find thieves. He ended up burying them. He warned once, he said. After that, there was no second chance. A few words, a few days, then the sound of a rifle echoing across the hills. They said he killed for $500 a head. They said he left a stone under the dead man's head as a mark of his work. They said entire families fled their ranches when they saw him ride into town. No one ever proved a thing. To some, he was justice itself, the gun that spoke when the law couldn't. To others, he was a murderer for hire, a man who'd traded his soul for someone else's peace of mind. By the turn of the century, the legend of Tom Horn had grown larger than the man. And that's when the frontier finally came for him. In 1901, in the hills near Iron Mountain, Wyoming, a 14-year-old boy named Willie Nickel was shot dead while riding his father's horse. His father, Kels Nickel, was a sheep rancher at war with the local cattlemen. There were no witnesses, no motive anyone could prove, just whispers. And all those whispers said the same name: Tom Horn. Deputy Marshal Joe LaForce decided to test the rumor. He invited Horn for a drink, pretending to offer him a job. The two men sat in a room with whiskey and small talk. Horn, tired and cocky, began to brag about killings, about contracts, about payments. When LaForce asked about the Nickel boy, Horn supposedly laughed and said, "I got $2,100 for 3.5 jobs. The half's the one that didn't die." Whether he said it or not, it was enough. By morning, the law had its man. When the sheriff came to arrest him, Horn didn't reach for his gun. He just said, "Guess it had to come sometime." His trial was a spectacle, packed with reporters, gawkers, and ranchers who'd once paid him to do what now condemned him. There was no hard evidence, no witness, only the word of a deputy and the shadow of a reputation. In court, Horn was his own worst enemy. When asked if he could have reached the Nickel Ranch by horse in an hour, he smiled. For a good rider? Less. The crowd went still. That smile sealed his fate. He was found guilty and sentenced to hang. In jail, he wrote his life story, Life of Tom Horn, government scout and interpreter. He didn't defend himself. He didn't apologize. He wrote about the frontier, about dust storms, gunfire, laughter around campfires, and the silence that followed death. He wrote about the dog he'd loved as a boy, about the desert he'd called home, and about how the world had no place left for men like him. On November 20th, 1903, at sunrise, Tom Horn walked to the gallows in Cheyenne. He looked calm. He told the hangman, "Ain't losing much, just my life." A moment later, the trap fell, and with it, one of the last ghosts of the Wild West dropped into legend. But the story didn't end there. A year later, his friends published his letters, claiming he'd been framed, a scapegoat offered to calm a furious public. A schoolteacher named Glendaline Kimmel swore another man, Victor Miller, had confessed to the killing, but her affidavit vanished. The truth, like the wind, slipped through the fingers of time. In 1993, a century later, Tom Horn's case was retried in a Wyoming courtroom, a symbolic hearing with modern lawyers and old evidence. The verdict? Not guilty. But it was too late. Maybe he killed that boy. Maybe he didn't. But the West was never about innocence. It was about survival. And Tom Horn survived longer than most. He was the last echo of an era when justice came from the barrel of a gun, and the difference between a lawman and an outlaw was who paid your wages. He was the reflection of a land that created killers, then called them heroes until it needed someone to hang. The frontier didn't break Tom Horn. It made him. And when the world finally caught up, it just didn't have room for his kind anymore. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a martyr. He was something rarer. A man carved entirely from the truth of his time. And like the West itself, he died the only way he knew how, standing tall, unflinching, and unrepentant. You've been listening to Echoing Westwinds, where the stories of the frontier never fade. They just ride farther into the dusk. If you want to hear more forgotten tales from the heart of the American West, subscribe now and let the wind keep carrying these stories through time.